that will make Connecticut less cost prohibitive to stay in. We also have to consider that, remember, we we also tax your car. If you have a car, yourself or your high school students have their own car, they don't just pay the sales tax when they buy the car. They just don't pay your license fee and registration fees, which, by the way, those fees have all gone up. They also pay a car property tax every year at Town Hall. So there's that. There's the real estate conveyance tax, which is an additional tax on your property if you were to sell your house. There's a tax on pensions that very few states in the country pay or force seniors to pay. In other words, you've already paid on your pension. Now you're paying for it again every month that you get that. And indeed, add the inheritance tax to that, it really creates a situation where it's very difficult to retire in Connecticut or retiree to stay in Connecticut. For all of these reasons, I have been very vocal about actually and successful in defeating a new tax that was going to be proposed on hotels, a new tax on hospitals. They were considering putting a new tax on financial services firms and also on anyone getting a bonus. Imagine if we did that in Connecticut, and that did not happen in our surrounding states. All very anti-business, unfriendly proposals. A lot of the reasons, and many of the reasons that I have worked hard on these issues, they have earned me in this candidacy the endorsement of Connecticut's top business organizations like Connecticut Business and Industry Association and the National Federation of Independent Business Owners, which are the small businesses, including the realtors, who is very concerned about the economy. But I also, work on other issues that are important, like education and transportation and the environment. And I'm very grateful to have received also the endorsement of educational reform organizations and Connecticut Fund for the Environment and the Sierra Club as well. Because one of the positives, we talked a lot about the negatives and the cost of Connecticut. There's also some real advantages of Connecticut, the quality of life, the beauty of the state, its educational system, and also its access to capital and to New York as well is a positive. But unfortunately, our environment is always under attack, as you well know, and this beauty that we have could easily be ruined. And I've worked really hard with particularly the local group, which is the Green Village Initiative organization that has worked really hard to bring, farming back into Westport, to be very concerned about protecting some of its neighborhoods from overdevelopment. And instead of just talking about, my values in that, I've also helped them to make things, actually concrete things, happen. But some of the things I'm very proud of is the ability to complete a stalled road widening through the corridor from Norwalk to Danbury that has been an issue for many, many years, but we've completed it this year. One of the other things has been my advocacy of mass transit. We need to get people off the roads and onto rails wherever it is possible. And one of our biggest assets that has been long ignored, except for my advocacy, has been the Danbury to Norwalk rail line. And this year we made a huge, huge step forward by getting $30 million. Part of it was stimulus money. Part of it was state money that had been sat on and nobody wanted to do it, but to upgrade the signal system for that rail line, which is going to really move it forward into the modern age. And by centralizing the signal system, make it computerized, a man will no longer have to pull a lever for a train to pass each other. Can you imagine? But nobody wanted to do it, and I forced the issue in this last 2 years. They listened to my concern. I made it my number one priority to get that funding. It was achieved, and now they're actually upgrading it right now as we speak. They're already working on the tracks, and they're also going to be working on the computers as well. Once that's completed, you can actually then electrify that line and make it more compatible with the main line, having some straight-through trains, which will greatly relieve. And why it's important to Westport, and I know Westporters really agree with this, is that other towns' residents use both the Saugatuck Rail Station and the Green Farms Rail Station when their own residents need it to get into New York. And they use up, the scarce rail parking areas and so on. So that's good news. If we can get people back on, excuse me, that branch line, it will really help. But we're also upgrading the stations themselves and the areas around it. And, of course, parking is always a big, big issue. We always need, and we need to continue to work on that. And that's one of the advantages that I received in winning this seat in 2008 against a great competition and, a political environment that was challenging, of course, was to become the ranking member on the Senate side on that transportation committee, and it really helped me to move some of these projects forward. It's why we really succeeded during a difficult time. I might say also, a little-known fact is that I was able to remove language in statute that mandated a superhighway through our region, going through 4 of our towns and one of the biggest wetlands. And by removing that language, they were able to sell off some parcels that had homes on them that were not being taken care of and needed to really, the state was not a good landlord, essentially. They were able to sell those off, bringing some much-needed funds into the state coffers. But it also allowed for something that the area has been trying to do for a long time, and that's to create a greenway, a pedestrian and bike pathway through that region. They could never do it before because that language prohibited them from moving forward on this wonderful, environmentally positive idea. Because I was able to remove that language this year, that project is now moving forward and actually has received some funds, some DEP funds, to actually do the design work, and hopefully one day the residents of our region will be able to take a bike or walk through some of the most beautiful wetlands and open space that we have in our region. So that's a good news story, hopefully.
Yeah, now let's talk about jobs for a second. We know jobs are also an issue in the current economic environment. However, in order to create jobs, we need to spend. In order to cut the deficit, we need to cut spending. So how can we create jobs while cutting spending?
Well, what you're saying, essentially, is that government is the one that should be doing all the spending. And that's exactly the opposite of what should be occurring. You're absolutely right. To create jobs, you need to have disposable income in people's pockets so that they can buy the goods and services in the area. That's what creates and grows jobs, because a business can't hire someone, even, for example, if the government gave them a special bonus. For every person you hire, we'll give you $1,500. Well, a business is not going to do that if they don't have the demand for the product that they're selling, right? They're just not. It doesn't make any sense because they're going to be out of business before you know it. So not only do you have to have a good product that people want to buy at a good price, you need to put more disposable income in people's pocket. How do you do that? Well, you reduce how much the government takes out of their paycheck every single month. And by putting that more disposable income in their pockets, they will be buying more goods and services, which do grow jobs. So, quite frankly, we're back to the original question, and that is, how do we reduce the cost of state government in Connecticut so that people have more disposable income, so that they're not taxed any further and more money is not taken out of their pocket?